FearScape Media Network, exploring the unknown, one podcast at a time.
Hey there, blanket huggers. Stefan here from FearScape Paranormal Podcast. Got some good news for you. If you want to join in on the investigation of the mystery of the recent emails from the man claiming to be Terry Wrist to Josh and myself, aka the Spooky Crew, and his advice on where to look for more high strangeness, or if you simply want to become a patron blanket hugger for some cool swag and behind the scenes goodness, go ahead and join our Patreon at fearscapepodcast.com/support or patreon.com/fearscapepod. There you can get Riskwatch access to the Terry emails themselves, the WhatsApp conversation about it all with Josh, Stefan, Santosh, and Olaf Phillips, and even any clues that are new that we have found in other FearScape-related bonus content. You can even help out and add anything that you have found to help us dive deeper into the mystery. And remember, you can also just be a normal blanket hugger, as there are a few non-wristwatch tiers for patrons not interested in Terry Wrist and that journey. You'll still have access to bonus interviews, articles, and live Patreon-only Q&As, as well as early access and discounted tickets to events put on by FearScape, such as psychic events, tarot readings, etc. Or you can simply support however you feel comfortable, with tiers as low as $1. So join today.
Thank you for tuning in to FearScape Paranormal Podcast. We are on a journey to understand and to discover the phenomena that seems to exist all around the globe. We invite you to join us on this journey into the unknown.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Out of This World episode of FearScape Paranormal Podcast here on the FearScape Media Network. I am your host, Stefan Gearhart, and I am joined, as always, by the metaphysically arranged co-host of mine, or is it deranged, Josh Rutledge.
You know, I am like a metaphysical puzzle in that all of my pieces are here, but not here.
Dude, I just felt Barkley from Star Trek get nervous. Like he just got real nervous. Like, oh, what about my atoms being split apart? What?
Yeah. So yeah, but other than that, man, I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing really well, as well. I'm just pumped, dude. We got to pre-record this interview with our guest tonight, and I am just still on a high. Yep. I'm on an absolute high tonight, dude, because we have one of the investigators from the newest Discovery Plus documentary getting ready to come out, part of the Shock Docs franchise. The newest episode here is Alien Invasion, Hudson Valley, starring, of course, who we love, Ben Hansen. But one of the other investigators on this show that we've got on the show tonight is another favorite of ours, Marc Dantonio. He's actually a chief photo researcher for MUFON. Already, outside of all the million other things, you know, astronomer, lover, all the things. He's just a fantastic guy, and we were so absolutely just humbled that Discovery Plus contacted us to have him on our show, because we love this man, and now I love him even more. But yeah, him, Melissa, and Ben got to go down to the Hudson Valley to go through, of course, you know, the Hudson Valley UFO sightings, Pine Bush, that whole area, the UFO capital of the world. I mean, they did some deep investigations, and I will tell you what, folks, I cannot wait to check out this documentary. It's 2 hours, and it's going to be on Discovery Plus August 15th. It's going to be bomb. Giggity. So, but yeah, make sure you stick around and listen to this interview, because we had us, as we usually do, a fantastic conversation. We are never afraid to ask crazy questions. So I was excited to see him, as usual as well, kind of fall along the same lines. You know what I mean? With us.
You know, a lot of times it was, oh yeah, I've had that somewhere thought, or oh yeah, we did this some more investigation. So it's nice to know that we're not off in left field somewhere. So.
Right. He's just got more stuff he can use than we do. So I'm like,
right,
ooh.
Exactly. You know, if we had the budget, you know, so.
Right. Exactly. So I do want to move on so we can hurry up and get to Marc here, but I would do move on and quickly just remind everyone, hey, make sure you share, rate, and review the podcast. You can always find that podcast at FearScapePodcast.com, or any of the other what did somebody call it the other day, podcast grabbers. I heard that today. Any other place you might catch a podcast, we're on there. Just type in FearScape, you'll find us. Also, just a reminder too, to join our Patreon. You can find some links and episodes and things like that there as well. Patreon.com/FearScapePod or FearScapePodcast.com/support there, and check out, we've got our first Q&A getting ready to come up here in about a week. Live Q&A. We're going to be talking about all sorts of really neat stuff. So make sure you join our Patreon.
You know, how we got started and how we became friends, and how Stefan saved his favorite hat.
Yes, all the fun stuff. Absolutely. And all that support goes right back into making this show even better. So, and big thank you to the patrons that we already have. We are so thankful all the time for you all. But I do want to get to our first segment of the week, which of course is Psychic Word of the Week.
And now, the Psychic Word of the Week.
Psychic Word of the Week, as usual, comes from the Encyclopedic Psychic Dictionary from June G. Bletzer, PhD. Rest in peace, honey bear. I love you. I never got to know you, but I swear, I think she's here. Santosh that one time, or was it Santosh, or was it Jim Schmidt? I thought Jim Schmidt.
It was Vashti.
Oh, it was Vashti. Oh my God, yes, Vashti, our favorite medium. She's the real medium. Thinks that she was standing indeed behind me. So I am definitely keeping her name alive. That is absolutely the case. But as usual, we flipped through and I landed on page 465, and the phrase that grabbed so many. I mean, let me tell you, I landed on a page where I want to read all of these, because the first word is phantom or phantasm. So I'm like, I want all of those things. But I did land, my eyes caught first, Phantasms of the Living. Phantasms of the Living. I would watch that movie. I'm telling you. I mean,
if somebody doesn't have that as a podcast name, there you go.
Do not steal our idea. Come to us. We'll sell it to you for $1.50 with royalties. Anyways, Phantasms of the Living. The apparition of a person going through a highly emotional state or a traumatic experience, which makes it possible for the soul mind, which has come up quite a bit, the soul mind to split and get a message through to a loved one who is not in that area. For example, a person seen the same time he is in an accident. Okay, that is definitely a classic thing that people. Oh wow, I didn't know it had a name. They'll see. Oh well, how I was just talking to him. How was he in this accident? And so so the soul mind is splitting. It's almost as if they're quickly going, I'm going to be going to the light. I need to go say goodbye.
So when I was younger, I was staying at my grandparents' house, and my dad was deployed somewhere overseas. He was Air Force, and it was one of the times that I don't remember if it was. I don't think it was during the Gulf War or Operation Iraqi Freedom or any of that kind of stuff. I honestly can't pin down the exact time. But anyways, I was asleep in my grandparents' bed, and my grandmother tells me, late years later, like all of a sudden you jumped up in bed and were just really worried about your dad. And we later found out that at that moment, he was in some shit and wherever he was. So, yeah, I don't know if that's related. I mean, I guess these things could come to you in your dreams, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like, I definitely feel like, someone, has to die, and it
Or I don't think it's death. I think it's near. It's like it says they're having a traumatic experience, and the soul mind can break free and go visit someone to warn them that it's happening.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. I just, because I've always heard stories of someone dying, blah, blah, my brain went there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. So yeah, even just a traumatic experience, it's almost as if you can send your visage to someone to say, hey, I'm lost. I'm hurt. It's a witch accidentally.
It's a witch male Marc Dantonio, right? So
right. But yeah, thank you, Junji Bletzer. Phantasms of the Living. Just like I said, anything phantasms. I love the old terminology so much. But let's go ahead and move on to. I've got a little bit of some interesting, fun, spooky news to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. From last week's spooky news.
Really.
And I'm sorry I'm doing spooky news so much, but I just am finding some interesting articles, man. But anyways, yeah, spooky news. So for this week's spooky news, this is something that we actually talk about quite a bit, and this actually comes from a Christian news website called Aletheia.org, and the article headline reads, Catholic Scientists Explore Extraterrestrial Life at Conference. And that grabbed my eyeballs like nobody's business. So it says the discovery of sentient life beyond Earth would beg the question of how it relates to God. So this is something we talk about all the time.
They have a plan, right?
Right. So the article reads, as commercial space tourism is taking off, the notion of life beyond Earth is becoming increasingly relevant. The possibility of discovering extraterrestrial life was a topic of conversation at the annual conference of the Society of Catholic Scientists. Not to be confused with Christian Scientists. That's a different denomination. There, experts suggested that such a discovery might not change our perception as much as one might think. This is uncharted territory, to say the least, for scientists and theologians alike. Humanity's quest for mainstream space travel is a distinctly 21st century endeavor. As such, the church has yet to fasten down any teachings on the topic, though we do know that there are plans in place with the Catholic Church, right, to how to handle it when it does happen.
Right.
Theologian Christopher Baglow, director of Science and Religion Initiative at the McGrath Institute for Church Life at the University of Notre Dame, that's a lot, commented, said, basically, we have a situation where the church has not taught anything definitively about that. So we have no doctrine to rely on, he said. So how do we proceed in thinking about this? And so he then says, faithful speculation. So according to Baglow, he went on to note that the conversation, of course, is faithful speculation until such teachings come. Still, the scientific community can help advance the subject by conceiving of the right questions. For example, discovery of extraterrestrial life would raise the question of what God's relationship is to that life form. Baglow reasoned that if a species were to reach a stage of rational thought, it would have a long history as humans do. He posited that in order to unite them to himself, God would have made his presence known to them as well, which that gets into a lot of the old contactee experiences like Indrid Cold and Valiant Thorn, things like that already said, hey, your God is the same as ours. This too would be similar to God's interactions with humanity. This theory further suggests suggests that a relationship with God could be where humans and aliens find common ground. Baglow was confident that humanity's relationship with God could be used as a model for comparison with extraterrestrial life. He told CNS, he said, "Thinking about what God has done for humanity is for me at the heart of what it means to be a theologian. So to apply that to a new question like this would be spiritually rewarding." And I think our friend, the theologian, kind of suggests the same thing as well. Karen Oberg, professor of astronomy at Harvard University, admitted that the discovery would create theological questions about salvation and incarnation. Still, she suggested that the discovery of life, especially intelligent life, would indicate that they are very specifically created by God. The consensus at the conference was that there is a possibility of life in the stars, and furthermore, such a discovery would not be a hindrance to faith, but affirmation that will promote understanding and appreciation of God's creation.
I mean, honestly, I would be open to. I mean, I am. Of course, we've talked about before. You know, I don't believe what a lot of people in the Catholic or Christianity faith believe, but I think it would go a long way towards acceptance of UFOs and the possibilities of what UFOs could mean if a lot of these denominations or faiths were to take a more proactive, we're going to put out a statement that acknowledges UFOs are real and acknowledges the possibility of extraterrestrial or other life. I think other people that currently push against it because it goes against what their religion teaches might be more willing to come in line with the acceptance of it.
Right, and I think that all the religious conspiracy theorists, I think, will end up being right, and their doctrine will be what is carried on to say that angels may not actually be, you know, the angels and how we look at that, but possibly another species that was created before us, right? That they are the angels of the Bible, but we used terminology that we know and created and the like, or things like the Nephilim or the giants of the Bible, or these other things, or the way in Elijah or whatever it was, Ezekiel, where he saw, you know, the angel, but looked more like a UFO and things like that. I think that the church will come and say, hey, look, no, this was always in the Bible. It's right here. Look, this is what Daniel saw. You know, I think they're going to say, this is what they were taught. All the things that the religious UFO conspiracy theorists have always said that the church looks at us like we're loony about. I think they're going to be like, yeah, look, it's all right there. It's always been in the Bible.
But I mean, imagine if that was the official stance, how much that would help to break the taboo around all this stuff.
Good gods, yes. But yeah, so that's my spooky news for the week. I thought it was very interesting, you know, and we talk about this a little bit with Marc in this interview about how the world is becoming a little more accepting of things. So I think it's quite fascinating to see that a group of Catholic scientists are getting together, and then the official churches to follow. So we'll see from there. But yeah, that is our spooky news. So let us get to our last segment before we talk to Marc Dantonio, and that is, of course, and this is very apt, is the UFO sighting of the week. UAP sighting of the week. Josh, what do we got? Where are we getting it from? And what's it look like?
Yeah, so this is actually coming from MUFON this week. It happened on May 25th of this year at approximately 11:23 p.m. in Southbury, Connecticut.
Not too far, really, from the Hudson Valley that we'll be talking about.
I did not see this anomaly in person. I was inside my home when our ring system sounded. A few minutes later, I decided to look at the history on our ring to see what it had detected, which you can see in the video I am attaching. It appears to be the lights in a circular or oval shape and looks transparent. The top row of lights are white. The lower rows are blush with one or two white lights in the lowest row. It looks almost like a projection. You can also see a reflection on the paved driveway below the image. The object was moving quickly and headed directly toward our garage. then appears to twist and rise when it gets to the garage, as if it's going to go over it. Other than crickets, I hear no other sound. It is not definitive to me whether it came through the wooded buffer between us and our neighbor, or down our driveway. It does look more like it came from a wooded area, approximately 20 to 25 feet of mature trees. The following morning, I looked around the yard and found nothing odd.
So, and we have, you and I have reviewed the video that is attached to the sighting, and it is pretty shocking of what it looks like. I mean, we had talked about some people had posted it on social media a couple weeks back. I think even our friend Ryan Sprague had it on his Somewhere in the Skies podcast page. But the people who want to say, oh, it's light reflecting off of a spider web, or it's a moth, or it's a car driving down the road and it's the lights that you see, I think it just really speaks to our willingness or want to explain things in a rational way rather than to postulate the possibility of the unknown.
For sure. Obviously, if you listen to the show before, I have issues with armchair skeptics, right? These are the people that just go, could be a light off of a spider web, therefore it is not alien. It is not UFO. It is not this. It is not that. Because I was able to say it could be one other thing. Well, why could it not also be, that's like me going, it very much could be a miniaturized UFO, so therefore it's not anything else.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, what it kind of reminds me of is one of the kind of little support craft that kind of comes zooming around the mountain in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
Because it's like
lights on
all
here.
the different lights, and it's this very kind of a swoopy motion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's honestly what it looks like. And so before anybody says, well, maybe they took that and overlaid it over the Ring video. I mean, that's very possible. But I mean, if somebody did that, they did a really good job at it to get the reflection to show up on the driveway and other things. So
right. And who puts their Ring video behind their glass door?
Yeah.
Like nobody does that.
So what this is, and I've got one of these outside of my garage, is it's a motion security light, and it's also got a camera on it. And so if you set off the motion light, it flips up the full floods and everything to illuminate the area. And I have the similar one, and I've gone out and looked at my video before, and I've picked up some odd things. Nothing to write home about, but so I mean, it's. Nobody puts it behind glass. It's not set up in a way to really go behind glass. And yeah, I mean, if you're able to find the video on social media, like I said, a few have posted.
Yeah, I'd actually seen it a number of times when you brought it to me. I'd seen it before on a number of UFO groups and things like that. And, most of the skeptics that were on there, it was dumb stuff like I just said. There was one guy that debunked it. Don't remember anything about it because my brain is dumb. That I did think was plausible, but not enough for me to change my opinion on it. But it does, of course, make me think, which is what it's all about. And I wish that I had more technology, or I could be out there to really test it and do some things that I don't have, because I do want to know, because it's fascinating, whatever it is. To me, it's like if it was a reflection, it's almost as if somebody had a broom and they were facing the square end of the broom and put like not string lights, but those fiber optic lights on the end of it, and then ran down a hallway and kind of moved around. But yeah, I don't know. Regardless what it is, it is an unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Yeah.
Regardless, even if it's just a light in the sky, as Chris Alexander would say. So very, very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that, Josh. And we may end up trying to find a public version of it and put that up for you guys to check out. So. But anywho, Josh, I'm ready to move on. You ready to move on? And
I am absolutely ready to move on.
All right. So you guys, please stick around. As soon as we get back, we are going to be talking to Marc Dantonio. Like we said, one of the investigators on the new Discovery Plus show, Alien Invasion, Hudson Valley. Not a show, but a 2-hour documentary. Stick around.
The SCP multiverse is under constant assault, and destruction can come at any moment. Therefore, having just one database is a folly the Foundation can no longer accept. Join Dr. Kevin Milgram and SCP-073, Kane, as they create an oral history of the SCP Foundation, in Memories of Kane, an SCP story, hosted by Daniel Doremus. For should the Foundation fall, the unkillable first murderer of man will live on. New episodes drop every second Wednesday of the month on the FearScape Media Network. Visit fearscapemedia.com for more information.
And thank you guys so much for sticking around. We always appreciate that. And like we said, we are getting spooky with Marc Dantonio, one of the lead investigators on the newest Discovery Plus show, Alien Invasion, Hudson Valley, as well as cheap photo researcher for MUFON. We are super pumped to have you here, Marc. Thank you so much for coming on FearScape, man.
Hey, thank you, Stefan and Josh. It's really good to be here. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
We're excited to hear what you got to say. We love MUFON. I mean, we're both members of MUFON, have been. We've had a number of MUFON folks. Kathleen Martin was just here a couple weeks ago. And
very
yeah, and we love our MUFON folks, and we are just super pumped to have you here, as well as we love our Discovery Plus dogs. We are huge Discovery Plus junkies, man.
Yeah. Everything that comes out, I like I binge it in the first night or first couple of nights. So I'm really looking forward to this one coming out as well.
Yeah, well, I got to see it ahead of time, and I have to admit, you have a little difficulty watching yourself on the show and stuff. I do,
right?
So I watch it kind of like with one eye and just think, am I doing anything stupid? Did I do something crazy? And,
I'm egotistical, so I don't have that problem.
Yeah. Did you do anything stupid, Stefan? No. And so I watched it, and I found that I was watching it with two eyes by the end. It was actually much better. The editing was very well done. I was actually very pumped by it. I actually thought it was a well done job. And I've been in a lot of shows, but I know that, sometimes they go your way and sometimes they don't, and this one was very, very well done.
Well, you can't go wrong with Ben Hansen. I mean, that guy is like the young Wilford Brimley, in my opinion. Like, you just want to listen to him for hours, but if he tells you something, you're also like, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Ben and I have been good friends for many years, and so both of us were surprised to find that they independently asked us both to work on the show together, without even knowing that we know each other. So we get to hear that. I hear that. Wait, you said Ben Hansen's in the show too? Oh my God! I got a phone call. Ben, hey Ben, are we doing this show together? We are. Wow.
But how much? But how much do y'all actually interact? I'm always curious about that. How much do you all actually interact in the show? I mean, is it
we're there together the whole time? And
okay,
you there? And then you know how. There's always these camera tricks. It's like
right.
Ben is made to look like he's talking to Mark, who's really at 2,000 miles away doing
right.
Mm-hmm. No, we were all there for the entire time. Actually, this show was done through immersion. We actually were all there in the Hudson Valley together at the same time, because, quite frankly, this topic required, a hands-on approach. We needed to be there, and because. One of my problems, I don't know if you guys have worked with me or heard of me before, that I'm extremely prejudiced toward getting data. I want data. I don't want hearsay. Hearsay is good, but then show me the data.
Right.
But so Ben has his strengths. I have mine. Melissa had hers.
Yeah.
And so together we kind of made one whole really good team, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I would sit in the back and go like this while Ben is looking and taking notes about something and talking to people, and I'm looking at her, responding to Ben, and reading what she's saying, and seeing if I find that believable, and then looking at Ben, matching what he's thinking, So we were all there at every site. There's only one time where we actually separated, where Melissa went one way and Ben and I went another, and Ben and I did an investigation in the evening at one place. With our infrared drone, and it turned out that that's the only time that we're really separated from each other, because she had to go do an interview with someone doing hypnotic regression, and so we're all, it was boots on the ground, because the Hudson Valley people, they've been plagued by this for over 100 years,
Yes.
Yeah.
Frankly, to just pay lip service would have been insulting to me as an investigator, and I wouldn't have done it. This was a total immersion. We were there with the people in their homes, and we were, sharing their pain, okay, seeing what they went through, hearing their stories, watching them become emotional and trying not to do so ourselves.
Yeah.
Because it was tough.
I equate, the folks who I think that have the exposure to the Hudson Valley ongoings, probably, their exposure is limited to maybe, the Unsolved Mysteries episode that talked about it back.
That's what I was gonna say.
back in the 90s, and I equate that to people who have seen the Mothman Prophecies movie, having just that very glimpse of what actually happened in Point Pleasant, that Keel's book really talks about it. So, I'm really interested to see how big of a breadth of topic that you all get into with the show.
Yeah, we actually chose to go down the path of trying to use some science to try and decipher what was going on. There's stuff we actually leased from companies, equipment we leased, which we never even got into the show. Things like a special CCD camera that was looking beyond the visible spectrum when we were walking in this house in the eastern side of the Hudson Valley in Torrington, Connecticut here, and this camera was meant to actually show things that weren't in the visible spectrum. Now, I'm an astronomer. I knew I was going to be an astronomer since age 9, so I know about cameras and how they work,
right,
frequencies and wavelengths, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm kind of a natural for the UFO topic. If you can find an astronomer who believes in it, right?
Right, exactly.
Right now, it's me and Avi Loeb.
Avi, yeah.
We've done some shows together, but honestly, I think that when you look at what the people in Hudson Valley are going through, this goes beyond your level of experience. This goes beyond anything that you may personally have experienced. I've experienced what I think is an implant being slammed into my sinus by something. I experienced missing time in the eastern Hudson Valley, a whole day missing, and I just remember the beginning and the end.
Wow. That's right. You're a native from there. That's right.
Well, I'm in Western Connecticut. I'm in Litchfield County of Connecticut, and so I'm Eastern Hudson Valley encompasses this part of Connecticut too, because the sightings don't stop at the border.
Yeah.
They don't know any borders.
Right.
They just cross. They're flying around. So there's a lot of really interesting things that have happened, and talk about the Hudson Valley. I got involved in that like in the 80s when, first of all, I joined MUFON in 1971.
Wow.
I was 11. Yeah. And I knew that there was something else out there, and I had to pursue it, and that's why I decided to become an astronomer at age 9, prior to even joining MUFON. And I followed through on that. I went to school, got my degree in astronomy, and I pursued it because I felt that I had to study what was out there, because I felt that what was out there might have made it here.
Yeah.
Okay, whether it was panspermia, life from elsewhere, or whether it was people who here from other worlds, beings here from other worlds, they certainly would not look like us, but they're here. And what we hear described by the people in the Hudson Valley are creatures that are the classic grays, and surprisingly some other types of creatures as well. And you watch the show, you'll see. And but honestly, what I found most intriguing was the fact that we had a town hall meeting at the town green, basically under a big gazebo. It was a very, very large area, and we had a bunch of the townspeople there, and they were all there because they wanted to hear what we wanted to do for the town of Pine Bush, New York. Okay?
Yeah, I was going to bring up Pine Bush.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I've been there many times, actually, even before this. We did the show there. And this town, being an epicenter, a lot of people came to this town hall. It was held at night, and because of COVID, we were outside. Okay, it was November. It was cold. So you'd figure, well, only a few people are going to show up, maybe 3 or 4. No. We had way more than that. Okay, we had a lot of people there, and they literally filled up this gazebo we were in, and we were listening to their stories. One by one, they would tell things that they experienced, and this person over here would look at that person over there telling the story. These are all townspeople. They all know each other, and look at them like this. That happened to you? Yeah. What am I getting at? They're all very tight-lipped about it. They didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
This is psychologically damaging stuff they've stored inside for decades in some cases. So,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and a lot of that is societal inflicted, right? So it's because we've placed such a taboo on it that people don't feel comfortable talking openly about it.
That's right. And just like airline pilots who, you want to report a UFO? No, negative, no, that kind of thing. Well, nowadays they can, and it's taken a little bit more seriously. Why? Because the military's taking it seriously now.
Right. Yeah.
No surprise. They have been for a long time. I do a lot of work for the military. I have my own visual effects company, but I'm a model making company as well. And I actually create stuff for the underwater industry, the submarine industry. And as a result of doing some work, I was asked if I wanted to go on a ride in a sub. Okay, that's what we'll call it.
Okay. Yes.
And that's fun I had getting seasick. Okay, yeah. But while I was trying to overcome seasickness, and this relates to everything, I was sitting down in the sonar shack, the little area off the main control room, and just trying to zone out when all of a sudden the sonar guy yells, con sonar, fast mover. And I'm like, what the heck? Seasickness was gone. I'm about to die. That's a torpedo.
Yeah.
I thought it was a torpedo. We're in the middle of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the executive officer just saunters around calmly. I'm thinking to myself, how could you be so calm? It's just
Yeah.
Well, anyway, he said, what do you got? And the kid's facing away from me, so I can't hear what he's saying directly, but the executive officer is facing me, who's sitting in the chair next to the kid, and I hear what he's saying. And the XO asked for the bearing and the range on the thing, and the kid said whatever he said. And then he said, well, how fast was that moving? And the kid figures out the speed, and he was incredulous. So he actually enunciated it quite loudly, and I heard it very clearly. He held his hands out, and he said, several hundred knots, sir. Underwater object, moving 600 knots. And he didn't know what to do. He just held his hands there like frozen. And the XO said, okay, log it and dog it. And the kid said, sir, yes, sir, and turned around and went back to work. I'm like, no, I got up. I walked over to the executive officer, because I'm a big shot, you see. I was invited on that boat. I'm a big shot, right? Yeah, you see what's coming. I walk over to the executive officer, and they say, oh, XO, I'm familiar with these fast movers. Is there anything I can help you with, sir? And he goes, Dantonio, right? I go, yes, sir. He says, you're having a good trip so far. Yes, sir, I am. Let's keep it that way. And that was the end of that. So I was like, okay.
Yep.
I'll just go back to my little seat.
So you know what that really reminds me of is the opening scene of the film The Abyss, where they're on the sub, they get the fast mover, right? I mean, it's a very much the same type of situation, and that one was clocked at, in the movie, clocked at doing 100 knots. And so, something that we have often talked about on our show with other guests and just ourselves is, are movies about the topic perhaps an introduction for mass society for the fact that these things are out there?
Oh, I thought of that.
And then we're gonna gradually throw it out there in the public eye as a movie, so that when it happens.
I mean, look at Star Trek Next Generation. They had tablets, on that show. Now we have tablets and phones.
That's right. Actually, before we had tablets, though, I got to tell you, remember the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Pierre Delay also had a tablet.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And guess who invented that tablet? Douglas Trumbull. Douglas Trumbull is the Academy Award winning visual effects guy who is actually a good friend. I work with him. We do a lot of stuff together. We just did a movie on Nikola Tesla. So anyway, but the point is, okay, movies will often preview things to come because, see, we can't think of anything that's patently impossible. I'm convinced of that. The human brain cannot think of anything patently impossible, okay, in terms of technology and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think that when somebody imagineers some new technology, it will become a reality. Like, this, right?
Right.
Spock, beam me up.
Right.
Well, if Kirk had this, he'd throw away that old piece of junk that he uses as a communicator. It's like, this has got everything on it.
Yeah.
You know? So
Right.
point, right? It just goes beyond sometimes science fiction. And, so that's, being aware of that is very important. And we try to leverage some of this technology actually when we're doing this movie, because for Hudson Valley, because we felt that, there's a lot of shows out there. All they do is interview people, and they get the ooh ah. It's these jump scare type show, or what was that? And then they go to commercial. Okay, well, that's not this. This show is not that. This is a movie that keeps you in your seat because it's all interesting. And I say a documentary, not a movie. So I found that it was actually a lot easier to watch than I thought it might be, because I have to look at me on the screen. I really hate doing that,
Well, that's
easier because it had a valid point to it, which I really enjoyed.
Well, and I noticed that in watching the UFO Witness show, it's something that Ben did all throughout the different episodes of that show, was try to take more of investigative approach, right? To do some tests, have a theory, do a test, determine if the theory holds water, right? So.
Right. That's right. And Ben and I talked on the phone yesterday. Actually, we talk a lot, and we were brainstorming about techniques to do this even better. And he asked me about technology that we could use for certain aspects of investigation, and I said, yeah, I think that we can come up with it. It doesn't, it's not necessarily have been invented yet. Okay, so we'll invent it.
Right. Or maybe there's a test or a technique that exists for something else. That maybe has a cross application. And
Absolutely.
One of the things that I've been toying around with, and we've been talking about, I went out to Google Earth and downloaded an overlay for all the ley lines. Okay. And then I went out and downloaded all the New Fork data for the last 50 years and loaded that into Google Earth, and then loaded all the Bigfoot Class A sightings in there to try to see if there's any correspondence. And what I found was really interesting, that in looking at a lot of the New Fork data, it seems to happen close to or even intersecting with ley lines. So now I'm thinking, is there an opportunity here to go to where an intersect point happens for a lot of ley lines and perform some experience to see if I can prove out that theory that basically ley lines are some sort of like super highway for these craft or things to about, kind of glide upon. So
believe it or not, we talked about that on the show, not on the show, that didn't get in, but Ben and I mentioned that several times. And we thought, can we actually find out where the ley lines are relative to where we are, and see if there's a correlation with all these investigations in the Hudson Valley? That took us down a path of geology and magnetic field studies.
Yep.
Even gravimetric studies, looking at the local gravitational field. That's something that we didn't fully flesh out while we were working on it. But the magnetic field stuff, there's these phones have some beautiful apps on them.
Yep.
For actually checking that, like the magnetic field locally. And we use these actually just to give us a rough idea of what we're looking at for, like, say, magnetic field changes. So when we're looking for the magnetic field correlations, well, then, it was just rough, but it helped us figure out if it was less or more, basically. Greater than, less than, not precise down to 2 decimal places, that kind of thing.
Right, and then it's that the ley lines, do they extend outside of Earth? Are they all along the universe and extending out of the solar system and things like that? And I always think of the way, Josh, how you describe it. Sometimes it reminds me of whatever the train at Disney World is called, but it kind of reminds me of that. You know what I mean? It's like it's got to ride upon these, and is that how things are able to go? They talked about. I just watched that TMZ doc you were telling me about, the UAP one, about the UAP report, and they one of the big things they talk about is we see these things break the sound barrier, yet there's no sonic boom. How is that happening? And it's like, is that it? Do we know? Can we know technology? They're like, we can't say, oh, it can't do that because it doesn't fit us. He says it's like handing a cell phone to a caveman and expecting the caveman to go, oh, neat, a cell phone. No, he's going to say, ooh, neat, shiny rock.
Yeah.
And I laughed because I thought that's exactly it.
Yeah. I know that, and that's kind of interesting. And then, of course, then he uses it to like smash someone on the head.
Right.
Right.
Sure.
It's the monolith. I mean, it's this whole thing.
Yeah.
Past and your phone has a broken screen. What do you do?
Yep.
Well, you know,
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and getting back to, you know, what you were saying, Mark, around if we tie this all back together a little bit and say that if we're shown things in movies like tablets and phones and things like that, because the human brain isn't able to pre-think about these things, and so by being shown it as a movie prop, we can then go off and invent it as a thing. Then perhaps these craft are showing themselves to us so that we can go off and figure out how they work and evolve ourselves to the next level of humanity.
I have a point to that too. Actually, it's a very good observation. It's one that I actually talk about when I do lectures. It goes like this: when you look at the technology that we've seen underwater, for instance, several hundred knot objects moving underwater. Okay, objects that come and go in the skies over Pine Bush in Hudson Valley. They're there, they're here, then they're there instantly. They vanish and they reappear elsewhere.
Right.
All of those things that happen are all related to the technology that they're using, right? Well, my experience was decades ago on a U.S. sub. Okay. And now, a couple years ago, the Navy got patents on hypersonic technology. That is, things that move faster than the speed of sound above in the air. Makes sense, but underwater as well.
Yeah, one of the things that we've been really talking about is or around those patents are those patents a way of disinformation to discredit the things that exist by saying, oh, well, the Navy has a patent for it, so it must be the Navy.
Yeah, I know for a fact that it's not, though, because after that sub trip, literally 9 years later, I had to do a job for the Joint Chiefs. Okay, and I actually did this project and I drove it down to Washington. I usually get there in 6 hours, from Connecticut here. And I dropped it off and I talked to one of the chiefs, and I actually said, I had the nerve or the guajolies, okay, to say to him, what can you tell me about the fast mover project? Because on the sub they called it a fast mover.
Yeah.
And the XO knew exactly what it was. And when he told the kid to log it and dog it, he was saying hide it and bury it. Log it and then bury it. And so I just wanted to find out. I figured I just asked the question innocently. Now, he could have said, never heard of that. What's that? Yeah. What's a fast movie? You mean a plane?
Right.
He didn't play that game. Okay, I worked with him. He knew me. And so he actually gave me an answer that didn't give me any information more than I could have found probably elsewhere through talking to regular people. And that was, he said, I'm sorry, Mark, I can't talk about that program.
Yeah.
You know what that did to me? Made me almost have an accident right there.
Yes.
Okay. He was admitting what I had suspected for the previous several years.
Something about pooping bricks comes to mind, right? So
yeah.
Yeah. That's a fast moving object as well.
Yeah. So that's true, and so and taking this back to Hudson Valley, you look at this and the sum of all your experiences. I think I had an implant that disappeared after the hospital took it out. Okay, I had missing time in the Hudson Valley area. Okay, for a full day, no explanation. I'm very sensitive to that. I had this weird experience on the submarine. I had these things that move very fast that no one knows what they are, but they know they're there, and they just track them and just say enough of it that we don't know how to handle them. And then we get to the Hudson Valley, and we have all these people that have had all these experiences, and these people who don't know what to do with them. And in some cases, it really seriously injures their lives, hurts their way of living. In others, it makes them recluses. And we had one person who didn't want to talk to us. We literally had to coax this person to talk to us because this person didn't want to, because it really, really, really bothered him. So knowing that the other people in that town meeting were talking to each other and seeing that all this same group had experiences that no one had ever known of each other was the first revelation. The second revelation was that we were there to try and figure out what your experience was, What happened to you? What happened there? Tell me about this. Tell me about that. And then we visited all their different places and went through it.
One of the things that I really like about, it sounds like this show, as well as others that have recently come out in the last, let's say, 6 months, is it really, I think, the underlying story that can be told about all these documentaries and episodes and series is that this is a pretty common thing that is happening around the globe. And people should not be ashamed or afraid to be able to share their experiences. And no, I'm not saying that everybody should just go out there and tell everybody in the world, if you don't feel comfortable doing it, don't do it. But bottom line is, you don't have to be ashamed or afraid. And that's the reason why we really started doing this show, is to really share our own experiences and let our listeners know that it's okay. You're not alone in what you're going through. And the only way you're going to really effectively work through what you're going through is to have that kind of common bond with others that are also experiencing it.
And that's very true. And I will say this, and working on this show is actually something that is quite enlightening for me, cathartic in some ways, because I am very much also dealing with things that I don't know how to explain. And I'm an astronomer, for crying out loud. This stuff doesn't happen to me.
Right.
And what's happening? And why? This doesn't happen to me until it does.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a similar. I'm looking here at your telescope in the background. I've got a similar. I've got two different types of telescopes. One looks kind of like that. I'm a big astronomer as well, and I've always loved looking at the stars, going out. I mean, I try to pass that along to my kids. But one of the things, so about a year ago, Stefan and I were out in our backyard. My backyard, it's a really dark area considering how close to the city we are. And we were just having a campfire and just looking at the stars and talking and stuff. And we see this object moving across the sky, and it flashes at us. It almost looks like a lighthouse moving across the sky, like it kind of almost like it's rotating around. It gets brighter, and then it goes dim, and then it rotates back around and gets brighter, it goes down, but it's like 25 degrees off the horizon. It feels like maybe only about 5,000 to 7,000 feet up in the air. Can't explain it. So we watch it, we track it. Standing there, Stefan happens to look over his shoulder, and directly behind us is this light that is a quarter of the brightness of the moon that we see.
Swings around, yeah.
Just like we see it there, and we watch it for maybe half a second, and then all of a sudden it shoots straight up in the sky and disappears.
Oh.
And having those two experiences, I have no idea how to explain it. And it has become such a passion for me to try to figure out more and more and more to try to help me process through what those things were that we saw.
Now, the arrogance of science, if it was talking, would say, oh, well, that was just a tumbling satellite, and that was just landing lights of a plane. They tilted them up, okay, and then be done with that. What they don't take into account is that what landing lights on a plane look like, and you could probably figure out what a tumbling satellite looks like, because they do that kind of brightening thing and stuff. But so they don't account for your bank of knowledge you already have.
Oh, yeah. We check every app to see what flights are in the area. I mean, we are so hardcore about that stuff.
I'm doing a talk for UFO Congress on that very thing. I'm going to be talking about the apps that people can use to try and, cut through the garbage and just pull out the good golden nuggets,
Yeah.
Flight Radar 24 is a good one.
Yep, we use that.
Stat Watch is a good one, Tesla Meter is a good one. And there's a lot of different, apps that I'm going to mention. That telescope is actually for our Eastern Remote Telescope. That was in the observatory, and I'm refurbishing it, getting it ready to put in our new building, because these are remote. We run them remotely, so no one has to go in there anymore. I can't stand 20-degree weather. Okay,
that's why I moved to Phoenix.
I have one out west of Phoenix in the desert, on a friend's land, and we just opened it up. It's SkyTour live stream, and it's
that's awesome.
It's made some absolutely stunning, breathtaking, makes you cry photos.
I have seen more things in the sky since I moved here in October than I have in my entire lifetime.
I took 25-second photos of a nebula out there. It looks like a large observatory took the photo, for one thing, but second to that, in just a half hour's time, I had a friend with me watching remotely because we connect through Skype and we all watch through my app, and we go out there with the observatory software I got. We just watch the screen. We see what it sees.
Yeah.
We had 25 satellites come through in a half hour, very obviously going in many different directions. So there's a lot more to see out there, I can tell you. And I also have an all-sky cam, and we've caught some really interesting things out there. I actually brought the all-sky cam with me to Hudson Valley because I wanted to use it out there. But we didn't have the opportunity because many of the places we went were trees. There were trees everywhere, and we couldn't set up the all-sky cam. But I really wanted to do that and have that used for that purpose too, because it's really beneficial. I actually caught what I think is a really interesting unidentified object out in the Arizona desert. I saw a KC-135 tanker go over, and you could tell by the way the lights look and this time exposure as it goes over. And then later on, I saw this little curve in the sky of light. This curve, a little tiny curve, way up in the sky, a circular pattern of light that was like something moving in a circle, a very, very tight circle, tighter than a fighter jet could even make. What was that? So I still don't know. And the frame before it shows it partially made, and the frame after it shows it finished. So I know it wasn't an artifact. Anyway, so see, that's the kind of thing. So that's our instruments, right? As an astronomer, Josh, we use our instruments to try and gather data, because data is king.
Yeah.
Data is king. And the folks in Hudson Valley, we had a lot of discussion. We had a lot of talking with them. And then we tried to acquire data, and we actually did get some data. You'll see in the show, we were in a house that they said there was some kind of being in the house. You'd call it a haunted house if you're into the paranormal. That's what Ben's side used to be paranormal. Now he's more a UFO researcher.
It's like us, kind of.
Yeah. That's fair. Okay. And but in that house, again, Mr. Skeptical, I required data, as Carl Sagan, my favorite astronomer, said. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. Right. Right. They do. So that's what I strive to do as well. So I'm sitting there being skeptical about this being in the house, and all of a sudden, I notice I can't move. And I'm standing in this living room, and I can't move. My feet are frozen to the floor, and I'm laughing. What the heck is this? A super glue? And then I realized, no, something's crazy, and this tingling started in my feet and started traveling up my legs, and it felt like someone going like this up my legs. Okay, and it got all the way up to my chest, and now I'm starting to panic a little bit. Yeah. And then it gets to my head, and I'm feeling in my head. I'm going, am I being electrocuted? Is there electricity there? And the homeowner says, no, there's nothing there. There's a rug. And I'm like, in thinking, what's happening here? And I couldn't figure out what it was, And as this was happening, I was reminded of the Star Trek episode where the Vulcan ship was killed by the big amoeba creature because they couldn't figure out what was killing them,
right?
Logically, and I couldn't logically figure out what was doing this to me, and I still don't know. I still don't really know. But in the show, it's there. You can watch it when you see this scene.
Yeah,
it's really quite. It was troubling for me because I didn't know what it was. Because that's supposed to happen to me.
We've talked before about that idea that most hauntings or things like that may not be spirits, but indeed some sort of ET or UT camouflaging itself, or maybe it's interdimensional or something. So
I had a theory about that because I was working on a visual effects prop for a movie Doug and I were doing, and I saw this semi-transparent thing walk into my shop and lay down on my floor, and I'm like, what the heck is that? I'm like doing this, my eyes, it's still there. It kind of looked like a Pekingese dog, kind of like a little yap dog, because the way it was sort of had a little stride to it, but it was like water without the shine. I couldn't really see what it was. It was more of a shadowy thing. And I went over and I stepped on it because I wanted to see what the heck is that. And it's like in 3D, and I stepped on it, and it yanked my leg out from under me as it ran out. It ran out knowing I stepped on it and took my leg. And my leg went up to the ceiling, okay, and I fell down and hit my shoulder on my workbench. I had to go to the emergency room for that. And my other leg came flying up too. It was like it was snapped right out from under me, and it took my breath away, And so some people would say that was an encounter with a ghost. I said, no, maybe that was actually rudimentary communication with a parallel universe bleed through.
Yeah.
And we determine it's a parallel universe intersection, that we're seeing here, a PUI, parallel universe intersect. I don't know. But see, all that was in my head when we were doing this stuff in Hudson Valley, because we were looking for these kinds of things. And we were in that house. We also were looking for that very, very thing to see if what was happening. We had some electronics that we distributed around the house to try and detect an incursion into our 3D space. Okay. The special camera that we used was there that didn't provide the proper results. I tried to tell them it needs to be nitrogen cooled. It's a liquid nitrogen cooled camera, but they ran without the liquid nitrogen because people at the company said we could do it without it. Well, no, we can't. And so we weren't getting the full breadth of the spectral response. Basically, we couldn't see everything the camera could see. Basically, so with a super cooled chip, we would have. So we ended up not being able to use that data because it didn't give us enough, but the other instruments were recording some really strange things. And there were some very tense moments there for a while. And the people that live in the house, to them, it happens all the time. We live in this house, and it's just a normal place for us.
I've lived in a haunted joint. I get it.
One of the things that we were talking about with Kathleen a few weeks ago is, there's always a lot of talk around the electromagnetism that's put off by craft when they come into an area.
That's right.
Right. They have this field generated around them. People report be getting sick or nauseous or maybe getting like pink eye a couple of days later or something like that because of whatever was going on with that craft. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about is when they are exuding this electromagnetic field, is that acting as some like a zipper, if you will, that's opening dimensional space or dimensional rifts, if you will, that are allowing our space and their space or other space to interact with each other. And if there is a lot of sightings or things happening around UFO craft in the Hudson Valley, that could help explain how some of these other things are kind of bleeding through.
That's as good a possibility as any. And again, for me to just say that's like a nonsense thing would be arrogance of science, and I'm not that. I'm open-minded about things, and I think that deserves and merits some type of investigation.
Yeah.
We didn't have the equipment to test that particular idea at the time.
Yeah.
But we did talk about portals as being opening and closing via some method, and we tried to think about magnetic, using some kind of magnetic resonance to try and get a portal to open. And we actually attempted to open a portal, and when I say portal, I mean that definition is really, really crazy. People can have many different ideas as to what a portal is. I just imagine it as a tear between our dimensions and some others. And as far as whether they can actually exist, I consulted another astrophysicist, for instance, and she said that, well, depending on your definition, they certainly can. And this is how they're developed. And it's not the kind of explanation you can give to someone who, works every day for a living and doesn't have, an advanced degree or whatever, right? Because, that's not the language they can understand. You have to give it to them in their language, right? So, that's where I come in. I try to make things understandable because I think science is for everyone. And so people should be able to hear what a portal is, for instance, in a way that has been explained to me in an advanced way, but then I should be able to explain it in a way that everyone can understand, because it's actually very important. If you get that base understanding, then we can take it to the next level, because I think everybody can understand the whole depth of what these things are. I just think it's going to take time,
Yep.
Yeah. And I think you think about these entities and you go back and it's like, I think Keel talked about this too, but it's like, are these entities the ghost sightings of the past 100 years? Or before that, the fairy sightings, before that, angels and demons, before that, gods or Weishugai and Wendigo and things like that. Because, we talk about Pine Bush and this area having over 100 years of history. Well, how much more? I mean, I looked at a map today and was like shocked to see how close like Sleepy Hollow and Tarrytown and things like that. One of the spookiest areas of New England is right in that valley area. And so it's like, makes you wonder how many of these old ghost stories and stuff that cropped up in this area were part of what they're seeing now or over the last 100 years of being documented.
Yeah, you know, I think that the folks in Hudson Valley now and then, you know, past and present, really reproduced what they saw, reproduced things in art, in culture, in writings, in books, you know, and so they basically said many things that were maybe possibly some embellishments of what they said in some cases, but in other cases were very accurate renderings of what they saw. And these things were you know, everything from entities to ships to just lights in the sky doing strange things. And I can tell you that these people, most of them have seen it all, and we were there to try and help them figure this out, you know, because that was the problem, was trying to figure out. Now once we heard all the stories, we had to regroup together and figure out how we were going to scientifically go through the process to try and solve his case, her case, his case, her case, and try and go through that. And I'll tell you that some of these were unanswered. Okay.
Sure.
Yep.
Of course. And we do have a lot of questions still, and Hudson Valley is big.
Yeah.
Case still huge.
I mean,
yeah,
honestly,
I saw a statistic. Sorry, Josh, but I wrap that up. As I saw a statistic that was talking about Pine Bush and the Hudson Valley area has on average one UFO sighting every day on the low end that they're seeing to this day still. So yes, talk about too much data sometimes.
yeah, you know, and going to what Josh was talking about before, you know, are the ley lines connecting structures? You know, do they have anything to do with this? Do the ley lines have anything to do with local magnetic field lines and how they're oriented as well? Those are all studies that have not been done. Okay, we would have to literally fly over Hudson Valley with a magnetometer on a plane and do a magnetic field study of the entire, an independent study, you know, of current present day.
Yep.
Because magnetic fields can change a little bit over time, and you have to do the study. And based on many things, from geologic strata down below to different types of building construction, they can change what the magnetic field looks like very locally. And I would be interested to see, I mean, up in New Hampshire, we have America's Stonehenge, okay? And I've been there and part of a documentary up there. And America's Stonehenge is a phenomenal place with a lot of sighting stones and a lot of layouts, a lot of really different structures that point to different qualities of the seasons, for instance. And they said they thought it was a camp for doing or a location for doing sacrifices. And I thought, well, I think it's a seasonal hunting camp. Okay, that was very, you know, because of the way the stones are laid out, they know to leave this particular hunting camp when Venus aligns with that sighting stone and this particular sighting stone, you know, kind of a thing at a certain time of the day, you know. So who knows, you know, but all those things can be related to each other, and it's the bigger picture that I think we're missing. I think we're missing the bigger picture about what's really going on out there. You know, we can talk about individual cases, but why the individual cases at all? You know, what's happening there? What makes it different? You know, like you said, okay, Stefan said it, you know, an average of one sighting a day. Well, that's true. You know, and so, you know, like I said before, you know, 99.9% of the sightings can be explained as the ordinary captured in an extraordinary manner, but that 0.1% is still a lot if you have a volume of them.
Right.
And those are just the ones reported.
Who and they don't report it?
Well, and we something we talk about quite a bit is how much all this other stuff is related. You know, do you look at just UFO sightings, or do you look at, well, there was a UFO sighting, and then the same day or the next day somebody reported a poltergeist, and then the next day after that or the day before somebody reported a Sasquatch. You know, so you know, do all these kind of things start to run together as, you know, maybe related somehow? Yeah,
and that's the other thing too is, you know, as soon as you start saying things like ghost sightings might actually be parallel universe intersections, then you get people saying, well, no, I think ghosts are real. I saw my grandmother. I guarantee it was my grandmother. Okay. I don't necessarily disbelieve that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that certain phenomena will manifest in similar ways.
Yeah. Also,
or if it is intelligent and using the mind and things like that, why couldn't it take a picture out of your mind to alleviate some of your fear, right? By showing you something familiar.
Right. Something you know before it eats your brain. I get it.
Well, and I'll also say that, we have for whatever reason, a want to put everything into a nice little container.
Yeah.
But everything may not fit into one nice little container. It may spread the gambit across things that we can't even fathom right now in our current way of thinking as to what things could be. So
I agree. I think that's very true. And I think that, unfortunately, as we mature technologically, then we'll, for instance, be able to bring better tools to the Pine Bush area in Hudson Valley to get some real answers. I mean, I can't tell you how much money and energy I spent putting in this Arizona observatory, right? And we can do some pretty wild and crazy things out there now. And the same type of effort applied to the Hudson Valley might actually produce a lot more results that might be more useful.
Right.
I want to have some Skywatch systems set up out there.
Yeah.
Ben and I talked about it, setting up Skywatch systems to just watch the sky. I brought mine, but we couldn't find a convenient place that would be safe for the whole time we wanted to do it. Okay, the month we were filming there, we actually would have needed to leave this camera out in the elements, which is fine, it's waterproof, with a laptop that would have been sealed up in a case next to it, and not have anything happen to it.
Yeah, that's the last part, right, is the kicker, right?
So we'd have to have security, and that means paid security.
Yeah.
Just sitting there watching a box all day long. And so the idea is that we're going to have to try and do this from a different perspective, and in other words, meaning seeing if we can find a way to maybe give the residents something they can put on their own, so they can watch for them and be
great idea.
Aerial security. Yeah.
Especially because you asked that you have to ask the question is why the Hudson Valley? Why particularly Pine Bush? Like, what is making that such a hotspot? Like, we know places like Sedona as well as Somerset, Kentucky have two of the largest quartz crystal areas, and they are definitely dominated by UFO sightings and the like and things like that, right? So I can find justification for Sedona and Somerset, but what about the Hudson Valley? What is it that is drawing that there?
I consulted geologic maps to try and see if I could find anything that might cause some type of a magnetic hotspot or magnetic low spot, and it's actually just shales and so forth that aren't necessarily very ferrous, magnetic.
Well, but go ahead.
No, I was going to say basically that. So geologically, just giving it a rough look in the time we had, I couldn't see anything that made it seem like it was going to be the geology was going to stand out at all. But that could be wrong. It could be that we need to have some other experts come in.
And I'll just point out that it is a part of the Appalachian Mountains, which
that's what I was about to ask is how deep is it in mountainous? Right.
So I mean, it is a part of that string. The oldest mountain string of the world, and it goes all the way over into England and the UK and all the way over in there. It used to be all connected when it was Pangea and everything. So, I mean, who knows what is really buried along the lines of the Appalachian Mountains because all along Appalachian Mountains there is. If you want to call it a hot spot or a hotbed of activity. So
right, maybe are these underground bases for them, right?
And maybe the mountains are there because they tunneled under them and maybe lifted up the ground.
Right.
They're bold people.
But the truth is that it's interesting if you compare the Rocky Mountains, there's not as much activity as there is Appalachian. You hear so many stories in the Appalachian areas of things flying into the sides of mountains or things like that and disappearing. Are there these openings, right? So
Bill say there's a rumor that they saw helicopters flying into large cavernous mountain openings.
Don't get us into deep underground military bases. We'll talk your ear off.
That's pretty dumb.
Yep, you gotta love the dumbs. We can talk about that
all day.
You know
long.
what? We actually, speaking of underground stuff, we actually did investigate some uplifted mound areas too, which we thought were interesting. And there was just so little time to put it all in just 2 hours.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. And I'd like to see, the editor's cut.
Yeah, I mean, we were already like, can we just get 3 seasons instead? Like, let's do. I'm so in, like, because Hudson Valley stuff, we talked about that. It's like when I was a kid, one of my first UFO sightings was very similar to the ones they saw in 82 to 85. And I can remember watching, I rewatched the Unsolved Mysteries today, and I was like, oh my God, I remember watching this. And I remember this being the moment where I was like, that's what I saw. Like being a kid, being like, telling my dad, that's what I saw, the way it hung there, which is why I never bought the hoax of the airplanes, because airplanes don't hang in the sky and just sit there and hover.
No.
And they're not the size of a city or a football field. So.
That's right. And I actually have the original photo that was taken by a pilot of that 1980s quote unquote boomerang that was seen in the Hudson Valley. And that photo, I circulated it to magazines widely, and I actually see it gets reprinted on the web all the time. But it was given to me, the pilot gave it to a state trooper, the state trooper gave it to me. And I had it in a book, closed in a book for years. Wow. I didn't know what to do with it.
Right.
It was a photograph now on film. That's how old this was, right? Back then. So that formed the basis of basically the second introduction to Hudson Valley. The first was the missing time, okay, in Western Connecticut that I had. And the second was this event. I mean, can you imagine driving down the highway and seeing like 200 cars pulled over?
Oh, yeah, I can't imagine.
People out of their cars looking up, what's that?
Yeah.
This pilot called me. And it might have been, I know a bunch of the state troopers, so it might have been that maybe the state trooper told him about me, but I was a MUFON investigator back then, not the chief photo and video analyst. And so they called me and said, can I talk to you about a sighting I had? Yes. I'm a pilot. And he went on to tell me all the details and said, my wife woke the kids up and took them outside and said, you have to look at this because you'll never see anything like this again. And it was that, this is a pilot's wife now, who's used to hearing the stories from the pilot about the weird things that he sees flying around the country. Right? Yeah. And that was in the 80s. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the Hudson Valley thing that got me interested in Hudson Valley. That's where I started to poke around, you see, and started to realize, wow, there's so much here. I don't know where to start.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that I won't know when to stop. I think you guys are aware that I don't know when to stop.
No.
Yeah, no, I don't know when to stop.
Friends that I have that are pilots, I mean, they have got stories that have never reported. My brother was in the Civil Air Patrol for years and years and years.
Okay.
And one of his main supervisor, I don't know what they call him there, but the supervisor or whatever was actually the astronaut Ken Johnston that has all those moon photos and all that stuff, which is how we got connected to him. But yeah, my brother Dustin tells me because it was at in Albuquerque there, the Air Force Base there is where they were out of, and he said so many of those pilots would sit down and talk to them and tell them these stories of things that they saw while they were out, because they take them to camp and they'll show up and do things for them and stuff like that, but they would tell some of these crazy stories. My brother, man, he's got a book of stories from other people of pilots that have seen stuff.
And the military pilots have always stayed quiet because they've had to. Everything was always under some classification.
Yeah.
But they've been given the green light to talk about it now. Most of the Nimitz guys I know and call friends, and these are guys that in some cases their lives have been seriously affected to negative about having to hold this in for all these years.
Oh yeah.
And now being able to talk about it, it's like it's a release. Oh, I can finally talk about it. You know what I mean?
I bet. Yeah, and some of those guys had, take that stuff to their grave.
That's right.
And it sucks. I can't imagine.
I didn't talk about the unknown submerged object I saw or witnessed to until after the Russians came out and started talking about it.
Yep.
And I started to say, yeah, well, our guys have seen that too. Oh, how do you know? How do you know that? And little by little, I tell them a little bit more. never violating anything that I wasn't supposed to.
Right.
And it was interesting that our Navy, for instance, knows they're there but can't do anything about it. And they're in the air, and we know they're there and really can't do anything about it.
Well, you know, and I want to be, you know, something we've talked about in the past. The task force that was recently stood up, the UAP task force. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting that it was aligned to the Navy and not to the Air Force or the newly then created Space Force. So, you know,
I agree with that. That's really cool.
So I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and I think we've been going for a little bit. So I want to give you an opportunity, Marc, to just, you know, plug a little bit of, you know, where can they find information about the show? Where can, you know, when does it come out? Where can they have any information, and where can they watch it?
Sure. The show is going to appear on August 15th. It drops onto Discovery Plus, so it'll be available to watch at any time. But it's going to be available. It's like going to Netflix, you know.
Yeah.
Go to Discovery Plus and watch it there, and it'll show up on your feed. You know, when you go into Discovery Plus, as a new show available, probably. Same way that other services do that.
Yep.
And it's a 2-hour documentary that's, in my view, and not, again, I would be happy to say if I thought it was crap, I would let you know it. Okay.
I appreciate that.
Wouldn't want to work on another one if it was like that. I really wouldn't. But this one was actually very well done. You know, I was waiting for the moments when they would have caught me going like this, you know, or funny with my face. But you know, to their credit, they edited it very well. And we got as many answers as we could in 2 hours.
I'm excited, man. Like I said, we're already Discovery Plus junkies and fans of you and Ben's and everyone's, and we are just very, very excited about this. I know our listeners are excited about this. And,
I hope so.
Yeah.
You know, one more thing I didn't mention, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
Okay. We also started looking into genetics and seeing whether there was genetic links between the people that had experiences. So you'll see that in the show too. I'm already past 2 hours, Mark. So I'm like, I already want more of these. I'm gonna need 15 follow-ups because now knowing we were talking to you, I've kind of dug myself deep into holes with Hudson Valley stuff. So I'm like, I know 2 hours ain't gonna answer all my questions. So. It's not, you know, and you're going to say, but what about this? What about that? It's like, don't think we didn't see it. Don't think we didn't hear about it. We didn't talk about it. You know, so much couldn't make it into the final cut, but it was all talked about, and we're all going to, we've actually, Ben and I have been planning on additional investigative forays out there. And here's how much those folks trust us. They actually said to us privately, anytime you guys, you know, actually us three, you know, Melissa, Ben, and I, anytime you guys all want to come back here to do this, you let me know. You're free to come back. We'll talk to you anytime you like.
You probably even heard "use guys," and you were in. So, well, Mark, thank you so much. Anytime, man, you got anything you want to talk about, please. We would love to.
Stefan and Josh, thank you, man.
Have you guys
really
on and just talk, because I've enjoyed every second of this. I could have talked to you for hours.
I will say, by the way, Josh, off to your Bigfoot type thing. I've offered the use of my infrared drone to the Bigfoot guys, and they, you know, for years they've never wanted to take me up on it. I don't know why.
Really?
I mean, isn't that the kind of thing you'd like look for? I mean,
that's we were literally just talking about that.
I've got a Psionics Pro, and I want to go out and look for Bigfoot stuff with the Psionics.
We just said we wanted to go out to the woods and use it to look for things. So.
Yeah, I have a Psionics as well. I mean, I love those cameras, and Ben turned me on to that camera. Actually, it's better than the phosphor camera, you know. And I can tell you this, you know, nothing beats the FLIR infrared from the air. Nothing.
I bet. Yes.
I asked my son to try and get lost in the woods, and I was going to find him. And there was a lake nearby here. I asked him to go get lost in the woods, and he couldn't get lost. I knew exactly where he was.
That's fantastic.
Really, really wonderful. Yeah. So you know, you think Bigfoot's going to hide? Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah,
If that exists, we should be able to find it with rigorous application of technology.
Oh yeah, I'm like, let's get up to Oregon and Washington and let's go, cause
we only shoot with cameras.
Yep.
That's the only way to do it.
Yep.
Well, guys, I had a great time. Thank you. I hope you guys enjoy the show.
I already excited. I ain't even watched it yet. So
Sunday the 15th on Discovery Plus. You guys should have a good time. And now you got my information, so you can throw slings and arrows at me if I didn't cover something that you want me to cover or whatever. You know?
Don't you worry, sir.
Like they'll have to watch behind me.
Exactly. I may be big, but I'm stealthy. But thank you, Marc, so much.
Thanks again.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
Wow. Even getting a chance to kind of go over that and listen to it again, I'm still just fascinated. My God, the guests, Josh, that we have had on the show the last year have just blown my mind constantly. And Marc, you are no exception.
We talked about it a little bit with the folks from Wild and Weird West Virginia. It's almost just odd how the guests that we have on or the topics that we cover, how they kind of fit within where we are in our journey, right? And so Marc added a lot of additional content tonight to help us go and explore it and look into it for our own personal journey, and I hope that that's true for you all, the listeners, too, because I highly encourage you to go out and not only watch the documentary, but do your own do your own digging for the truth, so to speak. Because to think about the Hudson Valley issue as just being the one event that happened in the early 80s is a far cry from what it actually is.
Oh, I know. Hearing that there's 100 years one of the docs I was watching, I think Vice talking about the Hudson Valley, there was a woman, and I didn't write it down because I didn't know I was going to talk about her. But she's written a number of books just on the sightings. Like, she has from this video alone, I saw 3 books filled with sightings in Pine Bush and the Hudson Valley, like over the past 100 years. That's insane. What a crazy place. It's just we gotta go. We have so many places we gotta go, but I want to go there too, man.
Yeah, the first places we got to go is the things that Terry gave us, because those are like
for
time
sure.
sensitive.
We also need to FOIA fast mover project or program. We need to get on that. God, Marc, you gave us so much stuff. I've written down so many different things we need to look up. So,
or at least the Black Vault people can do it, because they seem to have
they have a better opportunity. But I do want to move on here to get to our encounter from the FearScape this week. All right, encounters from the FearScape, Joshy Poo. This week, I've got one here. It's a little bit longer, but it is a doozy. This one comes from a listener named Melissa from Pennsylvania, and that's kind of Appalachia as well. So I thought that would be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and check out Melissa's story.
I had a UFO experience last night, around 12:30 to 1 o'clock in the morning. I was in my bedroom doing yoga, watching Supernatural, because I couldn't sleep due to my sciatic back nerve problems, and I heard a low humming sound. Now, it wasn't that loud, but apparently loud enough for me to hear. I didn't notice any other neighbors out and about when I looked out my window to see what the noise was. I wasn't sure what it was, though I did think perhaps the noise was someone's vehicle, but it didn't sound like a normal humming sound like that. When I looked out my window, I noticed that a light was sparkling, and it was pretty high in the sky. So I thought it was a sparkling star or a planet. Then it started to move in a line, so my immediate thought was, it's an airplane, it's a satellite, or maybe it's a helicopter or something like that. Then it very quickly moved backwards and then side to side. That's what really made me kind of push myself to think it was a helicopter. But the next thing really made me think that maybe it was not something that has a normal explanation, because the sparkle from it had more lights from it appear all of a sudden. It started to move in a circular spinning movement. The lights, I noticed it had a bell shape from the way the lights were placed, and this whole thing was moving. It was dark. I couldn't see any shape, but the shape the lights made, I saw those. Soon as I tried to grab my phone, of course, it would not focus on the sky, because I always had trouble with focusing my phone camera, even when I tried to take a picture of the moon. Well, when I looked back up at the sky, the whatever it was had moved more in the sky downwards, and after that, it seemed to just vanish, with the lights getting smaller and then less lights to one small sparkling light again, and then boom, out of my view. When all the lights were spinning, I'd say it was the size of probably something bigger than a helicopter or small airplane to a smaller light. I wanted to go outside to get a better look, but I didn't want to wake up my family members or my animals. I've always thought that I'd never have a UFO experience while I was awake, but guess what I did? I wasn't going to come out with it, but I figure, hey, what the heck? Everybody thinks I'm a weirdo anyway, so I might as well add the weirdo stories and freak stories that are told about me all the time. I'll just add to it. If I'm going to go big on this publicly, I'm going to go real big on it. So I'm sending it to the spooky crew. But nonetheless, I was a little freaked out the rest of the night. Or maybe too excited. I don't know. Fear is similar. I think they didn't want me to be able to take pictures of them if it was a UFO or a UAP. And at this point in my life, I don't care if anybody believes me or not. I know what I saw. And it was very different than anything that it could have been logically. And I'm too old to give a damn in the world of what others think about me from this. I was even going to tell my husband, but I know he'd probably laugh it off, or think I was half asleep, or explain it away. Well, I guess he knows now. But I'll just be honest with you. I'm not sure I'll ever know what it is I saw.
Well, thank you for sharing. That is an amazing story.
Yeah. And of course, since we had Marc on and things like that, I wanted to share one of our UAP encounters from the FearScape. We love these. I love our UAP sighting of the week, but getting to pull from just randos. But, knowing these come from folks that we love and love our show, we are just so thankful. So what an amazing story, though. I'm not even going to lie. I kept waiting for the abductee part to kick in, when she went to bed, or a night hag experience or something.
Well, and maybe not all of that happens, right? I mean, it's, everybody has a different experience, and the people who have those experiences, probably have them for a specific reason. So
sure. And it reminded me of my UFO sighting here in Arizona, the one that I reported to MUFON, the one with the triangle that spun around and then became one light and then went away, because her talking about how the lights went to one light and then just slowly, phased out. And that's a lot similar. I mean, mine spun around and some other things, but it reminded me very much of that. So, but Josh, I want to get out of here. I do want to let you guys know, be on the lookout. Next week's episode, we're doing a cool crossover episode with the folks at Wild and Weird West Virginia. Wayne Barnes, he's been on the show. Joe Perdue has been on the show. Ron Lanham is the only one that hasn't been on the show yet, but that's happening. But we're doing a two episodes, one with them and them with us. So we'll be sharing when their episode where they interviewed us and we have a cool discussion comes out. And then, of course, we'll have our episode with them on where we're going to be talking about some really, really cool stuff. So, always look for that. We've got some amazing things coming up over the next few weeks, few months, all sorts of stuff. I want to get your guys' head in the game now because we're getting closer. But if you're in the area within a few hours drive at least of Louisville, Kentucky, the weekend of October, the first weekend in October, Josh and I are going to be at Paracon in Louisville there. We're going to have our table set up and the like. So if you guys want to talk to us and meet us, get some free stickers and some things like that, we're going to be there at Louisville's Paracon. It is also a part of the Fright
Fest.
Fright Fest. Excuse me. The Fright Fest. It's Fright Fest / Paracon. So the whole, like, most of the cast from Monster Squad is going to be there. I mean, it's just a mashup of cool horror and paranormal stuff. Lance is going to be there from Misters of the Dark with me as well. So there's going to be some really cool stuff. So make sure to look up some information on Paracon in Louisville, Kentucky. We're going to be there. As always, again, Patreon. Boom. We love you guys. FearScape Podcast at gmail.com. You can send your encounters in the FearScape to us for that. Always, you can shoot us ideas for topics or folks to try to interview or things like that. We are always open to taking a listen and the like. Josh, you got anything else for our wonderful blanket huggers out there before we rock and roll?
No, other than the day that we're recording this is my birthday, and I did not ask on social media this time around, but I'm going to ask folks now for my birthday as a belated birthday gift. If you all would just rate, review, and share the podcast, I would be greatly appreciative.
Yep. And of course, as usual, if you guys give us a good rating and a good review, we are all about hooking you guys up with some free swag.
Stickers.
So just let us know. We'll hook you guys up. But happy birthday, Josh. Looking good for 21 years old. Appreciate it.
It's my what's the running gag? It's my 12th anniversary of turning 21.
Exactly. But we'll go ahead and get out of here. Again, FearScapePodcast.com, FearScapeMedia.com to check out all the other podcasts there. We're going to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for listening to FearScape Paranormal Podcast here on the FearScape Media Network. This has been Stefan. And remember, keep your eyes on the skies.
And this has been Josh, and the truth, if ever, is now.
August 15th, Discovery Plus. Be there or be square. And also remember, hold those blankets extra tight, because things tend to get spooky when you're listening to FearScape. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
We hope you have enjoyed this guidepost on the road of high strangeness with us. And we thank you, as always, for listening and joining our caravan to the weird and unknown. Please consider supporting us as we continue our journey to find the answers we all seek. FearScapePodcast.com /support.